to share with you why I am here and why I'm so excited that you are as well. The first time I attended Brampton Mastermind was in mid last year when Mohammed Faki from Paramount Fine Foods was speaking. Some of you might have been there at the event. And I had just moved back to the country. I was so terrified because I knew nobody in the city of Brampton. It was scary. It was so scary. I had all these business ideas running through my head and I was like, who do I know in this city that I can get help from, that I can potentially, get resources from, even learn how to run business here? And I found out about Brampton Mastermind. It's like, okay, looks interesting. I'm checking it out on Eventbrite and I'm like, okay, I'll come check it out. I come here and I was blown away. Such an incredible place to form connection. And connection, as many of us know, is where business often happens, right? Today, actually, I walked in and I saw a lot of familiar faces. And I saw those familiar faces interacting with each other. And I was like, how do you know each other? Connection. Some of them are actually working together. You never know who you might meet here tonight, who might end up becoming a business partner, a customer, a client. You never know. So connection is where it all happens. And I'm very excited tonight to help you connect with one more incredible person, Shelly Elsiger.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're very excited. I think everyone in this room is just buzzing with energy, like I definitely am. So I'm speaking on their behalf.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great community and I can't wait to share your story with everybody here. To start off, I would actually love to ask you how you were in Atlanta last week for a conference. Could you tell us a little bit about how that went?
So I just got back from Atlanta. I went last Wednesday to a conference that was called No Longer Virtual, taking things offline, as I'm so used to being online. So it was interesting to actually get together with a group of people that I met originally on LinkedIn. And this conference has been taking place over the last 3 years, but it's made up of people that actually connected online. And it was a way to bring everybody together to see how we could actually help each other in a variety of ways offline. And it was really interesting because those people that I connected with online ended up being exactly the people that I thought they would be offline. So I realized that the value in the ability to network, whether it's offline or online, whether they're your people, and whether you're going to take an invested interest in helping each other. And that's exactly what the conference was about. So it was all about connection, but also even taking things further and seeing how we can come together, even across the miles, to help each other.
That's very interesting. Very cool. Okay. So the first question I like to ask, I like to think of entrepreneurs as superheroes, okay? So I believe like Spider-Man had an origin story, every entrepreneur has an origin story. Shelly, what is your origin story?
I do have a cape. I forgot it, but I do have one. My original story, the one about LinkedIn and high heels, or the one about how I came to be affiliated with LinkedIn and actually working with them?
Wherever you feel like your journey started.
Okay, so I guess I'll give you a snippet of two stories. I have my business, which is called Linked Express. I also work and affiliated with LinkedIn, so I'm a liaison there, especially with the learning team. Does everybody know lynda.com, the learning aspect of LinkedIn? Well, it's awesome, by the way. I'll give it a little plug. But it's an awesome place to actually build your skills. So I'm a liaison with the LinkedIn learning team. And I also have LinkedIn and high heels for women business leaders. So I'll tell you a little bit about both, how they came to be. My original story, when I was 13, I was a public speaker. I loved public speaking. I actually started when I was about 8 And 13, I got nominated to speak about empathy in front of, I guess it was the national playoffs. So they were hosting it at my high school, and I was going to be speaking about empathy. And it just happened to be right after my birthday. So my birthday's at the end of the summer, and the school year begins, and they were kind of using this as a way to start off the new year. Let's have this national public speaking conference here at this little place called Jacket River in New Brunswick. I mean, no more than 1,001 people. So everybody was really proud of that, and my mother said, "What do you want to, for this to happen?" And I said, "A pair of red high heels." And she said, "Okay." And we went off to buy a pair of red high heels, and I needed the flashy ones, and because they were my first pair. And so I actually, was ready to do my speech, and I got up there pretty proud with my cue cards and my red high heels. And as I was about to talk about empathy, and I called it, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And as I was about to speak, my bully in the audience decided to say something that was not so great, something that was derogatory. And I remember just the sweat pouring down my face and the sweat in my hands, and I started to shake, and my cue cards just fell to the floor. And I didn't even remember a thing, so I started to run from the back of the school, and as I'm running, my heels are a little bit big, and my left heel just came from underneath me and flew off my feet, or my foot, I should say, and I just went right down. And so, to top it all off, it was a very emotional and very sad moment. It's all I can describe it as. So I went off into my classroom, I grabbed my boots. My best friend was running after me, and I just ran home and said to my mother that I never wanted another pair of high heels, and I never ever wanted to speak in public again. But, take us now years later, and I realized that there are a lot of women, and I'll just use women for that particular story, where there have been times where we've lost our voice, and it's up to us to get it back again. So instead of really getting caught up in that story and making it one of, a story that got the best of me, I decided to make it a story where I got the best of it. So when I started to I started to interview women that I had met at Lean in Canada, a great organization to meet a lot of really professional women, and talk to them about their stories. It was interesting how they had kind of stories, not like mine, but their own stories of how they may have lost their voice at one point or another and what they took to get that back. And we started to kind of share stories, but then when I talked to them about taking that story online, because actually LinkedIn is what gave me my voice back. My voice started online, and then I carried it offline. They were very hesitant to talk to me about their positioning online. And I was really curious, so I was digging deeper, because I should have been a CSI agent really in my, that's what I've always wanted to be. So I started investigating, and I was asking everybody oh, you're not on LinkedIn? How come you don't have a story on LinkedIn? And then I found out why so many people had imposter syndrome, and why so many people so many women felt that they could not carry their voice and their style of leadership offline to online. And it was really interesting, and that's how LinkedIn and high heels came to be. So I still have my red high heel, my right high heel, because we put it in the tickle trunk. And I'm so happy my mother did that, because years later, it's a symbol for me to always, to let me know that I can face any adversity that comes my way, and I can power my way out of any situation. So that's kind of the LinkedIn and high heel story. And just on the Express story and how I got involved with LinkedIn. I was in Calgary on an educational conference, and I'm very much into the art of reciprocity. I believe I believe so much in giving without the expectation of getting something back, because I know that there's so much abundance in being able to do that. That I was sitting at the Starbucks in Calgary, and I decided to pay a coffee forward. And the guy ordered his coffee who was ahead of me, and I said, I want to pay this coffee forward. And the waitress said, you do? And I said, yes. And what's his name? You know how they put the name on Starbucks? I said, I don't know. And she wrote, I don't know on the coffee cup. But anyway, it was somebody from LinkedIn. And he said, I can't believe you bought me a coffee. And I said, well, you know, I saw you at the conference, and I figured you're kind of at that same point I am. We're feeling a little bit, you know, it's time for a pause, so here's your coffee. And he ended up sitting down with me and asked me what my vision of LinkedIn actually was, and I went on to tell him that I wanted to use it as an empowerment tool to help people to rise up and find their voice online. And he just thought that was the coolest thing. And then all of a sudden he became my mentor, and the relationship continued. He introduced me to some people back at the head office in Toronto. And the rest is history. I've been working with LinkedIn for a while. And actually, I work as a speaker, but again, as a LinkedIn liaison. So those are my stories of how both of those two precious moments in time that have really symbolized to me important moments that have allowed me to grow both personally and professionally.
How interesting. It's interesting how so many stories start with the whole like Phoenix rising from the ashes story, which is what it seems like happened here. All right, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I would love to hear about what exactly is LinkedIn Express, and you know, how did you end up really then getting started with it?
So LinkedIn Express is really about teaching people how to manipulate this complex platform. Many people throughout the years have seen LinkedIn as an online resume or a Facebook for adults. And I don't like either one of those. So we're not going to discuss either one tonight, because it's not an online resume, and it's certainly not Facebook for adults. So LinkedIn Express is really about guiding people through what LinkedIn is and what LinkedIn can be, because it's a pretty important and complex tool that can lead to so much success personally and professionally. But when we only see it as an online resume, we tend to not do what we can with it. There's a lot of lonely lurkers on LinkedIn. We all know them. I know there's some sitting in the audience. That's okay, we're family now. LinkedIn fam, hashtag. So people don't, they tend to kind of use it passively because it's kind of like they treat it as a resume, so somebody will find me on LinkedIn and decide whether I'm worthy of a job or not. Or they just put a profile up there because it's the thing to do, like so many social media platforms. Everybody's on it, so hey, let me go on it too, without actually realizing that LinkedIn is you, just online. So it's in fact the most important story that you'll ever write, the story of you, and it's just you online. So when you start thinking about LinkedIn in that way, it becomes a totally different experience. And then you can actually enjoy it, and it just doesn't become something else in your toolbox that you have to use and that you have to work so hard to work at, because it becomes something that's kind of living and breathing, the same that you're doing every day. Maybe not, you know, not that far, but it really is you. And when we start thinking about it as our story, our career story, our professional story online, we start treating it differently.
Very interesting. Okay, so I want to ask you the importance of creating a personal brand. And now I'm going to use your terminology and say, I guess, your personal brand story or your story online. And how would you recommend people to do that?
Okay, so first of all, I think you have to have a pretty good idea of what your brand is offline. We all have a brand. Whether we even think we don't have a brand, we all have a brand. It's not somebody else's brand, it's your brand. I think what's really important before we attempt to build something online, that we're comfortable with what we offer. So as opposed to going on LinkedIn and building it as a resume, we want to build it as an offering. We want to build it as a story that provides the readers and the viewers with an idea of who we are behind the title and what we do as people, what we offer, what our specialty actually is. So our unique value proposition, basically, is what has to take an upper hand or has to take a real importance on LinkedIn, and we have to do everything that we can to support it. So I have two specialties. It's the way that I see it, or maybe even three. But I know that I come from the career development world, and I know that I come now from the LinkedIn world, because I've had my business since 2010. Because those two are very powerful forces that I feel that I know a lot about, those are the two forces that I put forth on LinkedIn. So when I get on LinkedIn, I take an 80-20% approach of who I am as a professional. And then there's that 20% that I kind of throw in there that allows people to see my personality. Because on LinkedIn, it's just like anywhere. It's a community, and there are people that are doing the same thing. Like, for example, coaches or career specialists or LinkedIn trainers or speakers. So we have to know our niche. And our niche can simply be how we do it differently. And until we find what our niche is, it will be hard for us to take that niche and transform it online. But once we feel pretty comfortable offline, for example, and we know what we have to do, and we decide to stick to it. So we decide to stick to our niche, and then we decide to go full force online and develop that niche just like we would here tonight. You know, this is a fabulous place to network. We all have the ability to reach out and help each other. How do we do that? We have the location, we have the place, we have the bodies, and we have the ability to communicate and build relationships. The same thing happens online. So it's a place to navigate, it's a place to explore, it's a place to research, and it's definitely a place to build relationships, number one. So we have to learn that the things that we would do in a regular networking session or opportunity, we have to kind of learn, and it takes time to effectively do it online.
Interesting. Can you, within that, so you've talked to me a little bit about what it takes to create a brand online, and specifically you told me about 4 C's that you like to talk about. Can you share that with our audience tonight?
Okay, so I have more than 4 C's, but we'll start with 4. So the 4 C's of, branding yourself. Number 1 would be competence. So it's really important to know what you have and back it up. Social recognition matters on LinkedIn. So the more people that you have supporting your content and will allow people to recognize your competence. So not only do you have to provide the content that will show your competence, but you also have to have people backing it up. So that's what I often refer to my people pod on LinkedIn, Those are the people that that support me through thick and thin on LinkedIn, just like, you know, on an offline, in my offline community or my offline network. They do the same online, and I think it's really important, and they can back me up. So references are really important. I think people skip references a lot. They don't think about the importance, but references are part of social recognition, and it's the same as, you know, when you ask, oh, should I go to Business Mastermind? And somebody says yes, and then you're more apt to want to go because you're curious, or to Toastmasters, or to a doctor, or to a dentist. We really take what people say importantly, and the same thing exists online. If somebody recommends somebody, that's your strongest, the strongest ally behind somebody wanting to use your service or purchase your product. Or, you know, salesy doesn't exist on LinkedIn. If you're too salesy, it won't work. But if you know how to build relationships first, and then you have your support behind you, then that's the one way that you will eventually succeed in whatever your goals are. So competence is one. Content, if people are only living the lonely lurker life and not really generating or sharing any content, then that is another way that is that is going to, I guess, put up a barrier to how much you progress on LinkedIn. I give constantly. So there are a lot of people that I hear when I'm in conversation. They say, well, I don't want to give my content away. I don't want people to steal my content. But what I've learned over time is that people can steal all they want. If they don't have a clue how to, you know, how to use it, or how to do it, or how to communicate it, we have nothing to worry about. But it is, in fact, the only way that we can be thought leaders is to give away what we know. So one thing that I've done is that I've been recognized for a Changemaker series that I do every single month. I'm on number 14. I just finished number 14. I've had a few people in the room tonight that have been part of that series. I'm very proud of it because it gives me a way to showcase other people. I also do, every now and then, I did a LinkedIn Latte series. Everybody knows that I love coffee, and nothing better than a LinkedIn Latte. And I did that for 30 days. I did a special series, not just recently, on LinkedIn, like all kinds of different hacks and different ways that you can use LinkedIn. And I never think about not sharing, because I know that that's how people are going to recognize what I know. So content is really important, and diversity too. So we have to also remember that right now we're in a stage with LinkedIn, it's kind of changed. I think in if I'm not mistaken, probably 2017, the beginning of 2017 is where hashtag LinkedIn Human came to be. And what was meant by LinkedIn Human is that humans connect with humans. So even though LinkedIn is a professional platform, who are we behind the titles? And what can we do to make sure that we're connecting with people? So that's really important to have diverse content, because not everybody registers or attracts or are attracted to the same content. So diversity in your content is important too. And the ways, like now you can do video, you can do slide shares, you can do, you know, pictures. We are, humans connect with visuals. So being able to have visuals as part of your LinkedIn story is really important as well. So that's part of the content. Third one, charisma. Do you have charisma? Because charisma is important in offline and online. And not everybody has charisma. And it's unfortunate because charisma is what attracts people to want to work with us or to want to be around us or to want to listen to us. So I think charisma is really important, and we have to learn how to take the charisma we have offline and transfer it online. And that's the way that we speak and engage in conversation. And if you're in a situation where you're actually giving, you will learn how to actually be the type of person that converses in a way that engages people and lifts people up, as opposed to doing the opposite. So that's really important. So learn how to be charismatic is really important. And it goes along with LinkedIn intelligence. So LI, for me, it's LinkedIn intelligence. Like just remembering that it's a platform, but it's a very live platform, and professionals are engaging with professionals. The other one is consistency. So if you decide only to go on LinkedIn once a year, like I talked to a professor, I do a course at Rotman at the university on online reciprocity, and I was talking to somebody today, and he said, I don't know if I want to sit in on your class because I only went on LinkedIn a year ago. And I said, well, you know, you're not in touch. You're just not in touch. Like because if you only get on LinkedIn, you know, once a year or once every 2 months or even once every 2 weeks, the algorithm is not going to be favorable with that kind of activity. So if we really want to be successful on LinkedIn, it's not about beating the algorithm, it's about actually learning how to work with it. So the only way we can do that is to be consistent and decide on how we want to make that happen. So I tend to make my morning routine is around getting on LinkedIn, seeing what I can do for my population or my network or my connections or my LinkedIn fam, as we call it. What can I do? And then from there, I decide what can I give in terms of content. Sometimes I don't have a lot of time. Sometimes I have more time. And then I try, if I can, get on it one other time a day. Or I don't look at it as something I have to do. I look at it as something I want to do. So I don't see it as part of my work. Many people say, Shelley, when you go away, do you turn off of LinkedIn? I can't say I really turn off of LinkedIn. I may not be on there as much, but I certainly don't neglect it for any length of time because I don't want my algorithm to lessen. Because what happens is the less you're on LinkedIn or the less you're engaging on LinkedIn, the algorithm works against you. So consistency is really important, and finding that time within your day, within your week, to actually dedicate this time to you, this online time, this LinkedIn time to you is something that I also think is important. Yeah. So those 4, I would say, are my top 4.
Okay, cool. Competence, content, charisma, and consistency. Okay, great. I hope you all got that. And I like that you mentioned the algorithm as well, and I would like to come back to that later. But something that you mentioned in the earlier part of the answer was the relationships that you establish, the connection you establish online. So I wanted to ask how your professional relationships have changed because of the approach that you've been taking on LinkedIn. And what kind of doors has that opened for you in your business?
I think that every door recently, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, has definitely probably close to 100% been about my relationships on LinkedIn. So after I started speaking again, after several years of not speaking publicly, I decided I wanted to speak again. And this has been an excellent way for me to not only connect with people locally and do more speaking engagements, but I'm actually traveling within Canada, all over, and actually outside of Canada internationally. So it's given me the opportunity to explore that again and to actually to break down some of the walls, because once you start speaking locally, you get this bug inside of you, and it's kind of like, well, at least for me, you want to kind of take it further and further and further and go further and further and further. And so because LinkedIn is so global and I'm connected to so many people from around the world that especially lately, I've been getting asked to do quite a bit. So that's been really, really profound, actually. I think every day I have to pinch myself because I'm so surprised. I've been involved in books. I've probably done 16 podcasts. I became a LinkedIn learner for, I think everybody's probably knows Udemy and lynda.com. Well, I became the LinkedIn expert for Unacademy, which is a platform in India. I've never been. I do it all from here, but totally all from LinkedIn. So, I mean, I think that there's been so many opportunities that I can't go through them all, but everything from, publishing to speaking to even I think moving to Toronto from Montreal, because I was there for many years, had a lot to do with LinkedIn, because it's what I do at the University of Toronto. I'm a career specialist, but I'm also the LinkedIn trainer there at the business school. So I think a lot of it has come from LinkedIn. And my friendships, the friendships that I've built too, and the community, now I get to meet a lot of those friendships that I had way back that I was connected to in Toronto, and now I've made it a point of getting together and meeting those relationships, bringing those relationships offline. And again, once you get to know somebody online and you already have that relationship, there's already a desire to push forward and help you, or you help them, because you already feel like you know each other. I don't think there's one person that I met online and then took it offline and I didn't feel automatically connected to that person. It was just so natural. And I've also done a lot of LinkedIn locals, a few here in Brampton. So that's all, I think, a result of LinkedIn. So there are so many opportunities that I've gotten as a result that if I think back, this is a good kind of reflection piece for me, because it makes me realize just how much I've gotten from the platform and how much anybody can really get from the platform if they really want to use it as a tool.
Interesting. So definitely not an online resume.
Definitely not.
All right, so at this point, I would actually like to open the floor for some questions.
The algorithm thing, so how often do you have to be on a week for you not to be punished?
Okay. So LinkedIn video has become popular for a number of reasons. Number one, people tend to enjoy video because it's a way for us to take one step further to getting to know that person, because you're hearing the person, you're seeing them, their body language, you're getting to know them in a different way. And also the algorithm for LinkedIn has been, because they wanted to increase video and use video as part of the platform, they've actually extended the algorithm to embrace video, especially if you use captions as well. So a lot of people don't use captions, but captions actually help the algorithm. So it's become a tool more for the relationship building piece, but because it has become popular, they've embraced it enough so that they've actually embraced not only video, but the closed captioning piece as well. In terms of people, a lot of people do video, and they may not be, when I do video on LinkedIn, I do it with a purpose. I have intention around it. I still think we need to have intention because it is a professional platform and we will be judged depending on our goals. So I really don't do any video that's not related to my intention or related to something that I want to give. So whether it's my Changemaker series or it's part of my LinkedIn Latte series, I don't mind putting a video in there because people can get to know me more, but I just wouldn't put up a video to put up a video like I would in Facebook. Well, I wouldn't even do it on Facebook, but just to say. So, but are there people up doing videos on LinkedIn and not as professional? Yes. I think they're using LinkedIn, native LinkedIn video, as a way to kind of increase their confidence or different things like that. But I think we have to watch. I think it's a great place to practice, but I also think, well, I try to practice before and then I put it on LinkedIn, because I still know I have goals around LinkedIn, professional goals, and I want to maintain that fine balance between the two. And the other question was? How often? Oh. So there's no real numbers that I can give you to say, you know, if you're on 7 times a week or 10 times a week. But there's a book out there called LinkedIn in 15 minutes a day. So I kind of like look at that as kind of my window. I believe that we should, if we can, make LinkedIn a daily activity that we incorporate into our lives. Because I don't think it takes much for us to lose momentum with the algorithm. I don't think there's a number out there that I can say. Some people are on there too much, and some people are on there not enough. But I think it also has to do with, say you actually put an article out or something on your news feed that you know is going to generate a lot of interest. So it's something that's going to carry momentum for a while. Then you may not necessarily have to be on there as much because your content is so worthy and that it's growing organically by itself anyway. So you see what I mean? And I can't say that it's a long time that I've gotten to that place where if I put something out there, because I've been consistent with my content, I've gotten to the point that now my content grows organically. So if I didn't get on LinkedIn for today, for example, and I got back on tomorrow, I would automatically probably see 50 or 75 notifications for the content that I did put out, because it's grown organically, because people are attracted to it to some degree. So once you start getting in tune with the way that LinkedIn works and you start feeling more comfortable, and for many people it's getting over that imposter syndrome. Does everybody know what imposter syndrome means? That idea that I want to post, but maybe I shouldn't post because maybe I'm not the right one to post. There's somebody better that should post instead of me. So we hesitate and we don't post. And so the hesitation just goes day after day. So we just have to push ourselves to post what we know. And eventually, it's just like in the real world, we will start getting recognized for that content. And then it will get to the point that it'll grow organically. Your network will grow organically, your content will grow organically, and it will spread. So you won't have to be making as much effort in keeping up with the algorithm, because it will already be high, because you're already going to be recognized as somebody who's worthy. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, you have to be likable.
Hi, thanks for sharing such wonderful things. I have actually 2 questions. One is that you talked about diversity, and I write a blog every day, and that blog is anything under the sun. It's basically coming from a woman's heart. So you can say the basic theme is like women, but it's anything under the sun. So, and my profile on LinkedIn is as a public speaker and as a radio host. So do you think that diversity is going to help me, or is it like it'll be totally in contrast with my profile? Number 2 question is that we all experience a saturation point on any social media. So do you think that too much exposure can bring that saturation point on LinkedIn also?
Okay, so number one, I think if your blog that you're doing, anything goes, I think it only supports you if it's done well. So if it's tasteful and it's connecting with women, your target audience, then I don't think that it can hurt you in any way. I think what I would do is I would create another experience on my LinkedIn profile just for that. So I would have, because you can put simultaneous experiences on your LinkedIn. So I would have that as another experience, and I would use that to show my creativity and what I'm doing to empower women. So like I have two. I have LinkedIn and I have my career stuff. And often they overlap, but they're two separate entities. They connect, but they're two separate entities. So the thing is that you can do that. You can put another thing up there, but as long as it's tasteful and it's actually supporting your goals, not a problem at all. What was number two? I forget. Oh, saturation. So there are some people who are experiencing that a lot in LinkedIn land, for sure. And I think what happens, and what I've noticed recently especially, is that many people get caught up in LinkedIn land beyond the professional side of LinkedIn. So it becomes a personal, I don't know how to say this, it becomes a personal way out, you know, a personal support system. And in that way it can become very trying, and it can become very saturating. And I notice lately there have been actually some conversations going on about that. I have been on LinkedIn a while, and I don't really get to that point because I still know the difference between that it's not my real life, it's my story, but it's not, it doesn't take the place of what's going on in my life, and I don't get too caught up in other people's lives on LinkedIn personally, because then it will drain me, right? It will cause me too much energy and maybe too much emotional energy, and then I won't be able to do it the same as I'm doing it now. So again, I keep LinkedIn, it's my professional story online. I do engage, I've developed some friendships, but I don't get too wrapped up. When there's a conversation going on and I see that it's getting too heavy, I remove myself from it. I also don't go on LinkedIn actively 7, 8, 9 times a day. I might check if I get a message or a connection request, but I'm not constantly engaging. I actually only post one, maximum twice a day. And usually it's only once a day that I'm actually posting something. I might respond to a comment because I want to give back, but I don't get too wrapped up. I think with any social media site, we really have to, if we start feeling drained, we have to figure out where is that coming from. And I realize that it can be when I allow LinkedIn to weigh down on me emotionally. So I just remove myself from it.
Once again, thank you so much for sharing with us. So you're talking about having a niche and being very cautious that you know what your niche is before you start to post and start to create your profile. What are your tips for if you are completely changing industry? So currently, if you look up my name, it'll be real estate, and now I'm going into education. So it's a very different industry. It's something that I've done, I guess, in the background for a while, but people wouldn't know me for that. So now I kind of have to train it to see me differently. Any tips on how to go about doing that?
So now what you have to do is it's got to be education, 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 and not real estate, real estate, real estate. You're going to take on a new persona on LinkedIn, and you're going to take I think a good way is to reflect back on your career in real estate and see how that career in real estate, what it has brought you, and to bring that to light in a story related to education. So everything that we do in our past can somehow be recreated into a story to set the stage for who we are today. So what we have to do in our minds is move our mindset away from real estate, get some clarity around our new goals, education, but allow the real estate side of our personality or our past create a really nice pathway into where you want to go now. Because if you're doing LinkedIn in the right way, if you're building a story, the real estate will just be part of it. And your goals for education will stand out. So move away from real estate now and only set your mind towards education.
I have a follow-up to that, actually. So how would you, taking that very example and taking something that you've learned through the real estate experience and then taking it into a story about education, how would you go about doing that? Like, can you give an example?
Well, it's hard because I don't come from real estate, but you know, stories intertwine. Story intertwines, and even the fact that I come from a small village and I grew up there, I mean, there's something about that I can weave into my story. If you notice my story on LinkedIn, I don't know if any of you actually looked me up before coming here tonight, but it's a good habit to get into, just saying. Before I go to any conference, I always look everybody up and then I try and connect with them or send something out. But if you notice my story, I start my story, which is the summary. I don't call it a summary anymore, but I start my story with a little snippet of when I was 13 and my red shoe. Because it's actually how people know me, and it's actually part of my brand. So I didn't do that for quite a while, and everybody said, how come you never talk about your shoe? Because when I was just talking personally to people, I was talking a lot about my shoe, and I was doing, but I was kind of leaving it out of the equation. But in fact, a lot of people resonated with it, and now it's so much part of my story. So if you look at my story, I don't start off with, I work at U of T and all of this stuff. I start off with what I feel really helped me to become who I am. And then there's little things in my story that I bring up along the way. So that's what you do. I think what a really good habit or a good reflection piece is to kind of go back where you started and what you learned from being a real estate agent, or in real estate and what you did in real estate. But if I even think about being in real estate, and I do work, because I work at the university in careers with business, I do know a little bit about the real estate world. And there are so many skills that are transferable in this world, in this career world, that you could easily weave a story. And I'll talk about stories as later on in the workshop piece, but it's just taking pieces and mentioning how they strengthened your character or strengthened you as an individual, personally or professionally or socially, and how that will make you a better educator. Because on LinkedIn, it's about the person behind the title. If we always keep that in mind, that's what will come out in your story as opposed to a title. Because people don't really search titles. They search the key words and they read your story, or they read at least the first 363 characters of your story before they decide to hit more. And you want them to hit more. So you have to be enticing. You have to be engaging. You have to be memorable. You have to be catchy right up front. And then once that happens and they click the more button, what do you think happens to your algorithm? Whew, they love it. So, you know, you can weave that into your story to make it engaging. Because the majority of people that I know have have switched some aspect of their life, whether it's moving, whether it's starting a new career, whether it's taking on a new degree or something like that, or a new interest, and it all shapes us, right? I'm certainly not the same person I was 20 years ago, but it's still part of my story. So, yeah.
So interesting, especially the fact that the person you are behind it, really, when we go online, we often, specifically with LinkedIn, we become so enticed with the title, the job I did, what did I do within that job? But the person behind that story is what people are coming online to look at. And that's where authenticity lies. And I've actually heard you talk quite a bit about sharing authentically online. And I think this is the perfect moment to take that on and talk about how sharing authentically online, and this might be a new concept for a lot of people. How can that actually help you progress both in your professional brand as well as in your business brand?
I'm all about authenticity because it's a way for us to really showcase our unique skills, our unique story. People don't remember you because you took on somebody else's persona or somebody else's business or somebody else's identity, because we simply can't. And the more we try to do that, the less time we spend creating our own. So once we become in touch with our own message and what we can give in terms of the service or the product or whatever we want to showcase, once we get close enough to that we can actually speak to people authentically about our brand, that's when everything changes. But it takes some work, because most of the time, the people that don't know how to speak authentically about their brand or to speak authentically on LinkedIn are the people that have not worked at defining their brand. So this is always something, and you're going to see later when we talk about writing a story or creating a story on LinkedIn, that it's not about pulling things from your resume and just sticking it up on LinkedIn and thinking that everything is okay, because that's not how we relate to people. We relate to stories, and we relate to what authentically has brought you to where you are today. So I encourage everybody to really, go through a reflection exercise and really take a look at every experience that you've been in. What have you learned from all of those experiences? And also learn the art of the humble brag. Okay? I love humble brag. So humble brag is the ability to talk about your accomplishments in a very humbling way. Many of us, and I talk about this to different people all the time, and they say, I don't really know how to talk about myself or put myself in a good light, or I feel like I'm bragging if I say this or I say that. And it's okay. You put on that Superwoman or Superman costume and cape, and you just go to town and you just talk about your accomplishments, because they've gotten you to where you are today. And the more we share that, the majority of people are going to support us, and we'll be able to support them. And it's part of being authentic, is when we can actually be proud of what we've accomplished. I think it's one of the biggest things that hold people back, is the idea that they don't want to come across as braggy. So I call it the humble brag, and being able to do that in everything that you do on LinkedIn will help you to reinforce that you believe in your own brand. Because if you don't believe in it and you don't continuously reinforce everything that has gotten you there, then who else is going to support it if you can't support it and brag about it yourself? So I'm a really big believer in the humble brag. I will put everything online. I will share everything, whether I'm going to be here or whether I'm going to be there, I'm going to share it, because it also contributes to my credibility. So authenticity relates to credibility, and credibility relates to authenticity. So it's a very important component of, I think, off and online network, to be honest.
Okay, very cool. So actually getting into exactly what you just said, which was that people are often afraid to brag and afraid to really put themselves out there. What would be 3 tips you would give to anybody in this room who wants to break out of the shell and doesn't know how?
Okay, so my 3 top tips. Number 1, every expert was once a beginner. So if you're struggling with LinkedIn and you're struggling to find a voice on LinkedIn, I think we all have at one time or the other. But realize your goals and realize there is an amazing platform that can help you reach those goals. And then do what you can to learn, to do it effectively. But don't just say, I'm going to do it. Actually do it. So a lot of the people that I work with or talk with, they say, oh, I'm going to do it, and then they just don't do it. But you have to do it first, because then you have to actively live it. So the thing about LinkedIn is you can do it, but if you don't actively live it and actively work with it, then it's going to remain a tool that you're probably not going to engage with too much or feel close to. But if you start living it, you will. So that's one tip. The second tip is the branding statement. So a lot of people call it the tagline. I cannot say how important that branding statement is. I'm going to talk about it more in the workshop section, but it is your unique value proposition. So the majority of people only have their title in that branding statement, and you actually have 120 characters to work with in your branding statement. And this is where you tell people what you do for them. This is where you can line up your goals and line up yourself with succeeding in your goals by telling people exactly what you can do for them and how you do it. So it's a very important part because it follows you everywhere, the branding statement. So if somebody is going to connect with you, it's one of those parts that they're going to actually see as it follows you. And it's one of the sections that clearly gets my attention. I base a lot on the branding statement when I'm connecting with people. Third of all, send a note with every connection request that you do. The power in taking that extra 30 seconds to write a note, and you can do it on your phone, you can personalize your requests on your phone. It changes the way that people will relate to you. It will change the way that your relationships will be built. So LinkedIn will give you a lot of things. They will throw the background photo out, the blue photo. That's LinkedIn default life. They will give you a URL with a bunch of numbers. That's LinkedIn default life. They will give you, something for a recommendation. That's LinkedIn default life. They give you so much for LinkedIn default life. Just like if you don't fill in the branding statement, it will be the title of your first experience that you put down in your LinkedIn profile. That's LinkedIn default life. So you don't want to live a LinkedIn default life. Who wants to live a LinkedIn default life? Nobody. So what you want to do is you want to take that space and you want to make it your own. Because once you have your branding statement, I call that the title of your story, the summary that you're going to build, or what I like to call your story, is going to be in line completely with that branding statement. So if you don't have a really good branding statement and you just have your title, of course you don't know how to build it. Because it's like any good story, think about it. Any good story, whether we were children or even now, what do we go for? The title of the book. The content, yes, but the title, we want catchy. We want it to resonate with us. It's the same as the branding statement on your LinkedIn profile. Think about it as your, entry in to connecting with people. Very, very important. There's lots, but those
Yeah.
3 are important.
That's fair. Okay. LinkedIn default life. I'm going to stay away from that. Okay, so the next thing, I wanted to come back to something we touched on earlier, which is the LinkedIn algorithm. Can you give us a sneak peek into that?
Okay, so there are actually 4 parts of the LinkedIn algorithm that help you get searched effectively. Would anybody like to take a stab to see if they know the 4 parts of the LinkedIn algorithm? Or not really? Not there yet? Okay. No. The search algorithm. No. 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 So what parts of your profile, your story, what 4 parts of your story are important and necessary for you to be, for your profile to be optimized for search results? Okay, I heard skills, that's one. No.
Your endorsements?
No.
Your name?
No. No, but the tagline, and you're missing the biggest one, the story and the experience section. So not the title, but the actual experience section. So there's 4. This is for search results. There are also what we call anchor links, which is your name and other things like that. But the 4 key areas to help you to be optimized in search results are the top 4, your branding statement. So you want to use 120 characters. Use as much as you can. More is more in LinkedIn. Not less is more. More is more. The second one would be the summary or the story. You have 2,000 characters. I have 1,999. Use everything you have. The third one would be the experience section. So you actually get 2,000 characters in every experience section that you have. A lot of people just put their title and where they work, and that's it. It's a lot of LinkedIn real estate that you're losing out on. And the fourth one would be the skills section.
Sorry, I have a question. So under the experience section, do you recommend doing story type, so like a summary paragraph of what you did, or do you actually recommend listing out the almost like task-wise because of the additional keywords that you need then?
So I recommend both. I recommend it like kind of like a, a really good Prairie Girl muffin. So you have that on the top. So you have the muffin with all so the muffin is the summary. So you're going to, in my opinion, one of the best ways for your, to not make it like your resume is to load up a summary right from the beginning on each section of your experience section. And start off with a summary explaining how you were in that job, how you grew in that job, what you learned in that job, and how you contributed in the job. And that goes for any job, because any job, we should walk away and look back at it and just see what can we bring to light and show how we've grown or what we did in that particular job to make a difference. So my suggestion for that one is to start off with a summary that really brings your positioning there to light. So not about your roles and responsibilities. Most of the time we know what they are, but you have 2,000 characters. So technically you could do a summary and then you could do some of the roles and responsibilities. But I wouldn't get into the roles and responsibilities that would be intuitive. I would get into the things that are not so intuitive, to bring, and if you want to mix it, I mean, you have 2,000 characters. So that experience section, it's a great way for you to talk about the technology that you may have gained. Any, numbers are always good because it shows that you're aware of your successes in terms of numbers. But there are so many things that you can do that. And if somebody gave you a recommendation, and the recommendation is particular for that job, you could have the recommendation in your recommendation section, but you could also put that recommendation in the experience section directly related to that job. Yeah. Yeah. Or if somebody, say, gave you a hard copy recommendation, because they're going out the door, but say somebody did, you could maybe take a line or two from that hard copy recommendation, because it's probably not going to sit on LinkedIn, so you could take 1 or 2 lines and put that in there, especially if it was from a past job. It's a nice way to kind of like wrap it up. And again, it's a humble brag.
Interesting. I actually did take one, a written recommendation I'd gotten from an internship many years ago, and I scanned it, and you can attach pictures and videos and links to each experience, and I did that. I attached it, and I got responses because of it.
PDFs, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, the last question I have for you is, what is next for you, and what is next for Linked Express?
Well, I'm just continuing on. I have a lot coming up. I'm doing quite a few speaking engagements, and I'm traveling a bit. So, you know, every month is a different month, but I know that this Saturday I'm a guest speaker for the Women in Business at University of Toronto. So that's quite a big deal, a big day. I'm going to be speaking at the Toastmasters with Roger, and I'm pretty excited about that. So there's always all kinds of things that come up. I just got back from Atlanta, so I'm kind of still on a high from that. I got to come here tonight. So I'm actually doing what I set out to do. I wanted to do more speaking, and I wanted to actually, I'm always wanting to spread the word around about LinkedIn, because for the majority of people, LinkedIn is still something that they don't embrace, or they just use it, again, like a resume. And not to say recruiters are not going on there. 94% of employers and recruiters are on LinkedIn and checking you out and judging you, and you won't even know it, because they have what is called LinkedIn Recruiter, and you won't even know. They're looking at your profile like there's no tomorrow. But they're not going on LinkedIn to find a resume, because they will ask you for your resume if they want your resume. They're actually going on LinkedIn because LinkedIn will allow them to hear about your story. And that your story is how it tells them how you will be with regards to the culture. And now more than ever, employers need that fit with culture. On LinkedIn, they did a study, and 3 or 4 of the top skills, so people always think that it's like, I don't know, communication and organizational. The top skills for the soft skills were like collaboration was 1, resiliency was 2, and empathy was 3. So back in the day, you would never think that those 3 skills were skills that people or employers are looking for today. And how can we showcase that in our stories, our LinkedIn stories? So things are changing, and we have to be able to not only say it, but show it. So LinkedIn is really about showing that we are aware, and we can demonstrate those skills. And those skills are what they're looking for now. And buzzwords, I need to say about buzzwords, okay? People love buzzwords. So much so that LinkedIn puts out a buzzword list every year. So 2018, who can tell me the buzzword? It starts with P. Passionate. Everybody was passionate. So much passion that they didn't know what to do with it. So everybody was passionate. And if you really like passionate, I say use it, but maybe once. Like, people were really passionate in 2018, and LinkedIn picked it up. And in 2017, it was responsible for. Everybody was responsible, but we're not quite sure what they were actually doing. And then the year before that was motivated. Everybody was motivated. So it's always funny. I always love hearing about the word of the year on LinkedIn because it's, I get that. Because we often use them outside too, the words that we love and are comfortable with. So, you know, buzzwords, it doesn't mean you can't use them. It just means keep some of that passion down, undercover.
Okay, amazing. Well, I wish you all the very best with all the empowerment and the speaking you're going to do moving forward with Linked Express. We actually have a special treat for you guys today, and I can't believe you agreed to it because I called her last night and I was like, hey, I have this amazing idea. Instead of doing the regular roundtable sessions that we do, why don't we actually do a workshop so people can right away implement what they've learned, come up with a LinkedIn strategy for themselves, and instead of putting it off in a little diary and in your calendar that you're never going to come back to, let's make it happen tonight. And she agreed, because what a gift. So from here, I would like to give it over to you. Thank you once again for such a great interview. You'll also have time to ask more questions later, so keep those in there with you. And at this point over, I would like to hand it over to you.